Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about talking points, I guess. We're going to talk about how to discuss certain topics at an upcoming mill. It has become a tradition on this channel to take questions from y'all and figure out the best way to discuss them over a family meal, and in the process probably ruin Thanksgiving dinner. Normally when we do this, the questions are very specific and personal in a way. You know, how to deal with a personal dynamic that's going on. This year, it's pretty much how to deal with certain things that you know your relatives are going to say over Thanksgiving dinner when it comes to the normal political scene in the United States. A lot of these I actually have individual videos on, but we'll go through all of them at once, because the reality is, for years our betters have told us not to discuss politics and religion and money and all of this stuff. The reality is, when you look at the world today and you look at what is causing unnecessary loss, they're rooted in those topics. It's important to discuss them, no matter how uncomfortable it may be at times. So, this year, definitely, nationalize the stuffing, use a little baby guillotine to cut the cranberry sauce, whatever you need to do if you are so inclined to broach these topics. It is interesting because one of the big ones, I guess, is that right-wing pundits are still talking about border security. And a lot of people expressed concerns that their right-wing relatives will be bringing up that topic and the topic of how to deal with them. Seems like a good place to start. What with Thanksgiving and all, I would play into the holiday, and I would ask if they believe everything that they're saying. This holiday is about, in theory, according to the myth, welcoming newcomers. Ask them if they think people should be fed and helped to prosper. And if not, why did you have to drive across 2 states to get here to have this meal with them? The next one is obviously stuff dealing with Hunter Biden. Now, I have a video going over the Hunter Biden Ukraine thing, and it goes pretty in-depth, establishes the timeline, shows that everything they've been told about the prosecutor going after him and all of that stuff just isn't true. So maybe start there. I would also point out that nobody cares. He has a substance issue. This is well known. This isn't a scandal. It's not a surprise. Everybody's aware of this. There are things that, to me, when it comes to Ukraine and the business dealings there, to me they seem shady. They probably should be considered unethical. The one thing that they're not is illegal. By any of the stuff that we have seen thus far, none of it's actually illegal. Maybe it should be, but it's not. And then as kind of a closing argument, I would definitely remind them that you have decided that you will not be voting for Hunter Biden. And then you can always make the comparison and just point out that unless whatever it is that the Republican Party believes they are going to find when it comes to Hunter Biden, unless it is more dramatic than the stuff that Trump did, nobody's going to care, and all it is going to do is turn normal, independent, moderate voters away from them. The student debt relief is one that came in a lot, with the expectation that people are going to talk about the working class paying for the rich. This might be the time to discuss class and point out that in the U.S., under the capitalist system, there are two classes. There's the working class and the owner class. If somebody still has debt from college, they're working class. They may be well paid, they may be white collar, but they're still working class. Somebody is signing their check. They are exchanging their hours, their time, or their productivity in exchange for wages. They're working class. And given the constant right-wing talking point anytime it comes to taxes, I would remind them that according to the Republican Party, working class folks don't pay any taxes anyway. It's all the rich folk. That's why they deserve the tax breaks, and why under Trump's plan, the working classes is going to go up. Start there. Drill, baby, drill. The idea of producing oil at home. During this conversation, it is almost a certainty that they will use the term energy independence. Explain to them what that means. Explain that oil is a global market, and if the U.S. produces a bunch, those multinational companies that they're going to bat for right now, they're not going to keep it here. They will sell it wherever it will generate the most profit, because they're the owner class. They don't care about the working class. And I would point out that energy independence, as far as national security, as far as true independence, will never be something that is dug out of the ground. It's renewable. You may need to mine the components to make it, but the energy itself will be renewable. Until that occurs, the U.S. is not energy independent because it's linked to a global market. This is one of my favorites because it is just completely untrue in every way, shape, and form. The idea that everything that Trump is going through is because the Democratic Party doesn't want him to run in 2024. The Democratic Party absolutely wants him to run in 2024. Trump is not a winning brand electorally. I mean, you could make the argument that that sentence could have ended before that word. But when it comes to electoral politics, Trump isn't a winning brand. That's one of the reasons they didn't have a red wave, is because they didn't break from Trump. They echoed those claims that everybody's already rejected. Trump has been rejected by the voters. He will be rejected again. The Democratic Party is so certain of this that during Republican primaries, they used their own resources. The Democratic Party went out of their way to elevate Trump-tied candidates because they knew they would be easy to beat if they won their primary and then had to face a Democratic candidate. The Democratic candidate would win because Trump is a losing brand. Not just did they do this, they were right. It worked. Part of the reason they didn't have a red wave. And then when you're talking about red wave, there's a few people, and these are definitely going to be the toughest conversations, who expect their family members to be talking about wild claims about voting and that type of stuff. That's hard because if you're dealing with people who have bought into that type of stuff, you're going to have to forego normal argumentation. They're not going to, any statistics you give them, they're going to say that they're false. So you have to use anecdotal and make them draw their own conclusions to get them to waver from this. The way to start would be, hey, the Republican Party, because they didn't protect themselves during the public health issue, they lost more people. That helped sway the vote. because of their bad policies when it came to public health and because of pushing back against basic protective measures, they lost more people. It was easier for the Democratic Party to beat them. Then go into the Trump linked candidates. Dive into those and talk about how the Democratic Party elevated them so they could beat them. They will probably be much more receptive to this information than most people, because this is kind of an underhanded thing that the Democratic Party did. People who believe that they're manipulating the votes would be more likely to say, oh, they did that, did they? And get mad about it. But then when you get to the part where, yeah, they elevated them in the primary and then stomped them in the general, it makes them hopefully face reality that Trumpism, MAGA, the America First thing, it's not a winning brand when it comes to the average American. Nationalism is politics for basic people. People are certain that they're going to encounter family members who believe that anything the government does is socialism, and also have no idea what the difference between socialism and communism is. I have a couple of videos on this. One is a phone call between myself and a person with a PhD in this exact thing. And she can break down the differences between the various types of socialism better than just about anybody. So I would use that, maybe talk about it a little bit, and then show them the video. Another one is a video titled, Let's Talk About the Understanding of, or the Importance of Understanding Basic Philosophies. And it goes through a presumably right-wing person's positions and explains that if they're not following their betters, those people who get them angry over on right-wing media, their solutions, not just are they left-wing, they're incredibly left-wing. Most times in the U.S., when people say communism, what they really mean is totalitarianism. They mean the security state aspects of the Soviet Union. That's what they're talking about. Ask them to list those elements, and then ask them if any of those elements aren't occurring today in the United States under the capitalist system. This is one of the more personal ones, and this came in from a few people. Definitely have talked about this before, but always worth going over again. You have a family member who likes to tell racist jokes. The best way to deal with this is pretend you don't get it. Pretend you do not get the joke. Don't get upset, not initially anyway. Don't get combative. You know, they tell the joke and it always starts off the same way, looking over their shoulders to make sure whoever they don't feel comfortable hearing it isn't around. Once they tell it, just be like, what? I don't get it. And drag it out of them. Make them explain the stereotype. Make them explain whatever it is they're trying to get at, what they think should be funny. And most times, when you get them to explain it, first, the joke isn't funny. Second, most people are embarrassed by it. It probably isn't going to change their attitude. I mean, at this point, most of these messages are talking about family members who are older. You're probably not going to change the way they look at the world, but you can change the way they behave around you, and this is a good way to do it. Because even if what you say in the conversation that is definitely going to follow this after You drag it out of them. Even if what you say doesn't have an impact, they won't behave that way around you. They won't tell those jokes around you because they know you're going to ruin them by pretending not to get them. So even if you can't truly alter their beliefs, you can alter the way they act. And that's just as good. Trans sports. Yeah, of course. That's going to come up at Thanksgiving because it's a national, topic. Pull the stats. Pull the numbers where this is actually at play. You have states that passed laws about this that couldn't identify a single person in the state that it would apply to. I would also go back to the video that came out recently talking about how much the Republican Party, or elements aligned with the Republican Party, spent turning this into a midterm issue, and break down the math. $50 million to deal with, I want to say it was 4,200 kids. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I want to say it's around 4,200 kids nationwide. $12,000 a kid they spent to bully them, to turn this into an issue, to make sure that your family's going to be talking about it. Spending that much money to teach people who to hate, who it's okay to look down their noses at. Get into the money and then ask how much your relatives donated to these people, who then turned around and used that money not to advance some agenda that would help them, but just to pick on children. And then the last one is gas prices. This is where you encourage electric cars. That's where you go with it. And you'll get a bunch of arguments, you can't afford it right now, and that's fine. That's going to be a lot of people. But the more it's used, the more end up on the secondary market, the less expensive they become. The other one that you're going to hear is about how they're not powerful enough. That's when you point to the Abrams. There is a concept in the works right now that is a hybrid Abrams. An Abrams is the main battle tank of the U.S. military. It is the backbone of U.S. armor, and they are going to be turning it into an electric vehicle. I don't think Uncle Roscoe needs more power than an Abrams does. So those are the talking points for the most, the questions that came in most often. I wish you luck. For people who have to deal with this, I mean, it is what it is. Everybody has those family members. You're not alone. Just remember that out of all of these that I went through, each one had at least 10 people ask that question. You're not alone. The country is incredibly divided. Most of it is because a certain subset of people who are very interested in controlling low information citizens have put out a lot of information to manipulate them emotionally. They don't have the information in a lot of cases. And then sometimes your relative's just a bigot and there's nothing you can do about it. But for those you can reach, good luck. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.